Hmm, Today, I want to talk about reporting financial statement in your tax annual tax report. And I think for governments, this information could be a distraction. I think let's get into it. How much of a distraction it is, and maybe with AI you can eliminate the distraction and took advantage of it. But just it's a consideration. um you what I My point is, you just need how much money is flowing, okay? Because you, as a country that issues the currency, I think that's your perfect focus. If you focus on that, the information that you are focusing on is like, I mean, it's huge. And I think just focusing on that is actually for you. Let me elaborate it a little bit more. So let's say you want to tax income tax, right? And you would just look at how much money that a person put out, which means the expenses, how much money the company expended. You don't even look at the asset. You don't even look at the accounts. You don't even look at it. All you got to do is look at how much it gets out and how much it gets in. And from that, you can derive like how the flow of the economy. And obviously time would add into the information a lot, but I think the point is, the perk here is that you want, so the argument that uh, accrual accounting would not be taken into account when it comes to taxing a company, if you just look at the cash basis, would be written off, because you're a country, you would be seeing it um, in other companies. Okay, so let's say, for example, produce that went out to the people who didn't do books. For example, the farmers or the fishermen. Like usually they would not do books, and you wouldn't actually know. But from from the flow of expenses towards them, and then the revenues you got from the consumer, uh, you, as a government, I would be able to compare between people, and I would say, okay, these flows of money is normal, these flows of money is not normal. And from there, I could I already got some income, some tax flowing in from the VAT, from the GST for another country, or whatever it is. Maybe other country, there are countries out there that implement transaction tax. I don't really know. But from there on, I could kind of determine what are the costs and what are the revenues. And I think one component that you would want to implement here is to not sell below cost. Okay, you are not a non-profit organization. People are not non-profit organization. They are a business. So they rely on the government too. I mean, you could come in to help the economy by calling out people who are abnormally, you know what I mean, abnormally having a flow where it is not more coming in than coming out. And also another point is that justice, right? A government eventually, even make if they make things work out of injustice, they would become a dictatorship. They would become a negative government, and they would become like those communist countries in the past, and maybe even like North Korea, which is so. like horror example of a dystopian society. And it would, even though maybe you can, like, my point here is, it is an improvement that the people can keep secrets. Okay, they have company secrets, they have their own way of making things work. If they could put out, if you can see that the amount that comes into their business is just more than the amounts that came out over time, then that's good. That's all you need to know. And this this scope, you can just scale it up. You can just scale it up. You can cooperate with other countries to articulate, uh, like, international businesses, and determine their flow in and flow out, and determine your contribution margin, for example, just by doing that, just by seeing the expenses that's coming out. All you got to do is just reinforce the intellectual property issue, and reinforce the, like, for example, what do you call it, intangible payments. And from there, you just got the contribution margin, you got the percentage, you got, you got everything. You don't even really have to know how much. But this is the contradiction, right? You want to tax out of profit, right? How can you know that you got profit if you only know the cash basis of it? Um, and I think also, you got to understand that it is again, it is unjust for people to not be able to keep secrets, especially from you. And I think the scope of cash is actually a good milestone. Therefore, um, should you consider not taking profit out of net profit, but out of gross profit? Should you consider it? And you should reduce the rate. With XBRL, guys, you can, let's say, for example, people are not transacting with cash all the time. Sometimes they have, their own discount or bonus, given the relationship they've built over time. And they're not really, like, using your cash in a conventional manner. And it is not freedom to force people to do business a certain way, right? They have their own way of doing business. However, there's a contribution there from your firefighters, from your securities, from your, from the army, from the presence of the government, and from the presence of the people around the merit of presence, from the presence of customers, from the presence of diversification, multiculturalism, for example, freedom of speech, and also the advantage you get out of competition, so that you can compare prices. I think it's very encouraging to use it this way. And um, and then after that, this kind of, what do you call it, um, like, this kind of, contribution, right? You can label a transaction. You can mix and match, okay, certain expenses. You don't really They don't really spend a lot, but it is not a purchase, a direct purchase. It is just a relationship purchase, and you will label it as that, and it will categorize these expenses, or this asset spending, maybe, with, the same way with other companies, higher cash amounts of expenses. So you would categorize this with XBRL. You would compare it apple to apple, even though the cash involved in this kind of transaction is almost nothing. All right, it's almost nothing. It is a discounted transaction, but you would, because of the what do you call it, with the XBRL system, where you would label transactions. But yeah, I'll get into it later. With where you would label transactions, you can compare it apple to apple, and therefore you can determine whether this company is selling below cost or not. Um, and then after that, uh, you would say, if you use XBRL and if you use auditors and accountants still, wouldn't that still mean that you kind of use the financial statement? And would it still kind of mean that even more you are micromanaging in a way that you would kind of being monitoring all of the transaction? It is as if you have your own Bitcoin, and you would label all of the transaction, you would keep track of the transaction. I think the key here is actually labeling all of the money, and you have already done it with serial number in each money, but now you digitize it, right? And I think there's no harm in that. There's nothing bad in that. Having labeling your own people's transaction in your own country as well, I think there's a benefit to that. But you're not crossing the line of being against privacy as human rights. The way you would come about this would be not to prying into their own, what do you call it, non-money transaction, but you would pry into, what do you call it, uh, yes, money transaction as well, but as an alternative you would also kind of pry into, you would you would kind of pry into the ratio upon which regular contribution of the firefighters, the municipalities, in the same industry would kind of have. And you know from there on, you don't really have to use cash. Even you can determine your contribution as a government to the business of your people. And from there, eventually in the future, yes, you would tax profit, but you're more like taxing uh, per individual contribution, right? But I think that's the direction of the future. You got to change, and you got to change for the better. Otherwise, you would not be changing. You would be subject to the increasing entropy, or you would be getting older. So I think that is the future direction that you should go. Is just have the tunnel vision of cash. This is your product, this is your concerns. I would limit my concentration only to that. And from there on, you would kind of expand the accounting basically based on that alone. And you would figure out how to be just, be fair, and reward your own workers, your own government workers, including the police, including the army, from there on. And you would have satisfaction rate that is high, and eventually participation rate that is also high, and also innovations, right? And you would also at the same time kind of solve the antitrust issue, the monopolistic issue that could come into every single market, right? Because there's merit in spending for competition, for the sake of the reliability of your own data. Apart from antitrust, antitrust concern, I'm not saying that like highly performing people is going to be penalized, or but But what I'm saying is, you probably could give royalties to these people so that they wouldn't have to take even more responsibilities over time in their monopoly in becoming a part of your government or something like that, which is extra work, extra punishment on top of performance. Instead, they would receive royalties for encouraging competition in the market. It's something like that that can be, that can be done. And then also, what else that could come with that? People could have secrets, but at the same time, they would also be scrutinized if they play dirty by selling it below cost, right? So that's killing two birds with one stone. And I think it can be done. I think, well, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to tax plan this, um, tax plan this so that I would only pay zero tax or whatsoever. But it already happened even with now, with this crazy amount of onslaught of information or financial statement that even probably had been falsified. And you don't even have, not all regions have accountants that are capable to articulate all of these financial statements correctly. Not even the entrepreneurs themselves, would be able to tell. And why not you kind of play within your ballpark, and from there on, you probably could innovate accounting wise. You could innovate in not maybe being overly micromanaging, but actually secure your own interest. You don't really have to, you don't really need for people to be extra compliant or whatsoever, but you figure out how to, just fulfill your own interest, regardless, right? You don't worry about people not being micromanaged. Just let them go. But your interests are secured. I think it is there. I think it is just uh, waiting to be developed from that approach. And people are not approaching it because they are distracted with micromanagement, with kind of knowing everything, uh, deploying AI to micromanage people, to kind of articulate every single thing. No, you don't. I think we should adopt this discipline from Paul that says, do not think of things that are high, which means just have, just, manage your own business. And from there on, you can secure your own interest, right? Based on your faith, which means your own logic about sustainability. Um, I think there are more. I think there's something that I'm not saying, but it's better for me to get different perspective from real people so that I would not just triangulating myself and do something wrong. So um, it is just a question. Remember, guys, could it could it could financial statement be a distraction? I am not 100% sure, but I think, there's merit in this approach. And I think if you think about it, maybe you would want to implement it. So thank you very much. Goodbye.